I just want to go to Glenn Ignazio on all of this, the retired Air Force Special Operations Commander. Let's start with the Houthis, which is where Robert started. He mentioned the CENTCOM confirmation of these strikes. We can put up the statement from CENTCOM. What do you make of this, U.S. striking, as you see what CENTCOM had to say, these Houthi targets in Yemen?
Yeah, definitely needed. The Houthis actually shot down one of our MQ-9 Reapers, our unmanned surveillance and attack vehicles, just last week. And then we did see many of their drones, their surface vessels, actually going out and striking more of those surface fleets. So that's doing two things. It's impacting military and commercial maritime safety of the sea.
Now, Iran and what's going to happen next from Israel's point of view. Let's talk about this for a minute, because we've gone back and forth with various experts and guests this week about, are the nuclear sites in play? What about the oil facilities? So it was, as I said a few minutes ago, a seemingly offhand comment by President Biden yesterday about the oil facilities that sent the oil market up. The price of oil went up by about 5% on his comments about hitting the oil field. So today, in this surprise briefing room appearance, he was asked to clarify. Here's what the president said.
The Israelis have not concluded what they're going to do in terms of a strike. That's under discussion. I think if I were in their shoes, I'd be thinking about other alternatives than striking oil fields.
What would you be thinking about, Glenn, if you were in their shoes?
Yeah, I'd be concerned about striking oil fields because it reminds me of what happened in '91 in Kuwait and Saddam lighting all those on fire. However, I looked at a couple of things from past, present, and future threats. Past, where were those rockets launched that came into Israel? Two, where are the new rocket launchers or those that are preparing to launch on Israel and others? And then future threats, which would be the nuclear facilities like in Isfahan, where their research and development and most of their development to get to a nuclear weapon exists. I would take those out, and they consider the United States the #1 Satan and Israel the #2 Satan. One of the biggest impacts to us, and they would blame on us, is if they did something in the Straits of Hormuz. So keeping that naval vessels away or taken care of and strike so they can't do anything in the Strait of Hormuz.
So let me just get the clarification on this in terms of order, because and it might come down to this. Israel might do something, say, in the next day or two, and then Iran does something else, and then Israel goes tit for tat on this. What's the order you think makes military sense again?
Well, as far as targets, I think that the targets would be the vehicles that are launched and are prepared to launch any other ballistic missiles towards Israel. So that's the current. The next thing would be the future threat, which would be the nuclear development sites, which would change the entire dynamic if Iran had nuclear capabilities. And I think they would also look at where they could actually strain and stress the international community, especially the United States. And that would be how they could impact the Straits of Hormuz. So I would look at it that way in that type of stage. But again, Israel's probably looking at many other causes.
At a time of their choosing, and we'll see if that time is chosen soon. Thank you, Glenn. As always, Glenn Ignazio with the analysis on that. Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.